Hello friends, I have done many videos about installing operating system on Mi WiFi routers. But all I did was on a MacBook. I know a lot of people are using Microsoft Windows. So today I'm going to show you how to install OpenwRT with a Windows machine.
I'm Bill Gates, Chairman of Microsoft.
There are two ways to install OpenwRT. The first would be opening the router's case using a serial console to install. The second way is getting into the stock firmware, then use the mtd command to flash the OpenwRT images into the flash storage. I usually choose the second way to do the job, because I don't want to undress the routers. I would like to undress something else, but not routers. Usually we need to use SSH or Telnet to get into the stock firmware. If you are a Windows user, I assume that you don't know what is SSH, what is Telnet. You know the router doesn't have a graphic user interface, it only has a command line interface. SSH is a secure way to connect to the router's command line. Telnet is another way to connect. SSH is not supported by Windows by default. We need to install a SSH client on the Windows machine to SSH into the router. I'm going to install Git to start a bash console, then start the SSH client from the shell. SSH client is installed. We can start SSH from the bash console. Now it's time to get the access to log into the routers. For some devices we can get the SSH access. For some other devices using Telnet is easier. I'll show you some examples. For Mi WiFi router Nano, we just install this version of stock firmware, log in the administration webpage, copy the token from the address bar, paste the token in this link, then open this link with the curl command, then we can unlock the SSH access. Now I'm trying to boot into the recovery mode to install that stock firmware. You know how to get into the recovery mode, right? Just keep pressing on the reset button, then plug in the power. After a few seconds we can boot into the recovery mode. Just upload that stock firmware in the recovery mode. It's very convenient. The recovery mode doesn't provide DHCP function, so we need to set up an IP address manually.
A few moments later.
Okay, after the firmware is installed, we do a quick setup to get the token. See, the token is in the address bar. Just copy the token and provide it to the link. Also, provide your administration password and set up a new root password. It seems to be like Netcat and Telnet are not supported by the Git bash. I'll just post this link to update the root password. The router only provides 2 encryption selections. We need to add this parameter in the SSH client to connect. Otherwise, our SSH client would consider it unsafe to connect. Oops, missing parameters. I don't remember which parameter it should be. Maybe this one? Maybe username at source address? What else can it be? Target username at destination? Okay, finally I guessed right this time. It's the target username at destination. Remember to revert your IP settings to DHCP mode. For AC2100, AX1800, AX5, and AX3600, we can open these links to open the SSH port. The token is required as well. First, we need to install the specific version of stock firmware as well.
A few moments later.
The login administration webpage gets the token, provides the token to the links like I did for the Nano router. Then open the links with the browser one by one. For the Nano router, we open the link with the curl command, but for AC2100, we open the links with the browser. The Wi-Fi routers both use the same IP address 192.168.31.1, which is suspicious. SSH client refuses to connect. We need to delete the SSH record for the Nano router, then we can SSH into the AC2100. This part is difficult for Windows users. If you don't know the middleman stuff, it would be both dangerous and difficult to understand. For Mi WiFi router 3G and some other devices, we need to use a tool called OpenwrtInvasion to get the telnet access. The OpenwrtInvasion script is written in Python language. We need to download the script from GitHub and run the script with Python. Python is not available on Windows by default. We need to first install Python to do the job. Okay, now Python is installed. We should start the OpenwrtInvasion script now. But the script requires two dependencies. We need to install these two dependencies first. I forgot to add the Python path into the Windows environment variables. I don't know how to add. I will just open bash cd into the Python directory to install the two dependencies. Python is installed in the appdata local programs directory. Just go to the directory, start pip to install the two modules. Pip is the app store for Python. You know what I mean, right? You need some Python knowledge to do the job. After the dependencies are installed, please make sure the router is connected to the internet. The laptop is connected to the router. Then start the script. The script will trigger the router to execute some commands to download BZBox from internet. Just make sure you have a good internet connection for the router. It will download the necessary files to start a telnet service for us to connect. Don't forget the token. The token is very important. The token grants privilege for the script to execute the command in the router. Now the telnet service is started on the router, but our Windows machine doesn't have the telnet client. I just did a search, seems we need to enable telnet client function in the Windows system. Okay, not difficult. Just a few clicks we can have telnet enabled. But why need to reboot?
A few moments later.
Okay, now we can telnet into the router. For some early models such as Mi WiFi Router Mini and Mi WiFi Router Nano, we just download a single OpenWRT image. But for other devices, we download 2 images, because need to flash the 2 images into 2 different partitions, kernel 1 partition and rootfs0 partitions. If your device has a USB port, you can just copy the OpenWRT images to the router with a USB drive. If it doesn't have a USB port, you can use scp command to copy the images to the router. scp is the brother of SSH. We use SSH to connect. We use scp to copy. And I need to add this parameter as well to establish connection with the weak encryption. If SSH is not available, if you only have the telnet access, then you can use FTP or the Python simple HTTP server to transfer files. The OpenwrtInvasion script starts a telnet daemon for us to connect. It also starts an FTP server on the router for us to upload files. Just open an Explorer, open the FTP root directory. Then head over to the TMP directory. Upload the images, then it's done. The Python simple HTTP server is too difficult for Windows users. I will not talk about that in this video. If you want to know how to use it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check this video. Now we have the access to get into the router. We have OpenWRT images transferred to the router. It's time to run mtd command to write the images into the flash drive. There are different partitions on the flash storage. If you are using early models such as Mi WiFi Mini and Mi WiFi Nano, you just write the OpenWRT image into the firmware partition. If you are using another model, you need to write the 2 images into kernel 1 partition and rootfs0 partitions. When the router is powered on, bootloader is the first thing to run. Bootloader will do some checks, then it will load the operating system from the flash storage to the memory. Then all the things happen in memory. So, we need to tell bootloader that we have flashed the OpenWRT in the kernel 1 partition. Next time, please start loading data from kernel 1. Just issuing these commands, bootloader would get the point and do the job. I'm not gonna talk about the details of these commands, it's just some environmental variables that mark kernel 0 as a faulty partition. Of course, if you are using Mi WiFi Router Nano and Mi WiFi Router Mini, you don't need to issue these 2 commands. Now we reboot, OpenWRT would start running.
A few moments later.
It's not difficult, right? I'm trying to make it simple and clear for Windows users. You know, it's not possible to cover everything in only one video. I suggest you to watch my recent uploads no matter you are using Linux or Windows. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I need 1000 subscribers. Thanks for your support. Bye bye!